Torah.
Amen.
Amen. I want to mention that we will have a diminished population today because Howard Weisberg's grandchild is being bar-mitzvahed today.
He was there last night, yeah.
So I explained to Howard that draining Jews away from Torah study is not a great mitzvah, but
a good cause.
What can you do? I mean, the guy's going to have it. This is wonderful. The family was all there yesterday, and that's lovely. Anyway, so we wish Howard and his family, Seth, the whole family, well, and that's where a bunch of people are today. March 20th, 6 p.m. I think the way it works out, 6 p.m. is the reception and 6:30 is the actual concert. But as far as I'm concerned, I'll at least be at the reception, and I may stay for the concert. But nah.
You're having dessert after.
Oh, okay. Then maybe I'll stay for dessert too. Okay.
It said something about Ukrainian food. I don't know what that is. Do you, Rabbi?
Yeah.
Then you'll find out.
They got delicious food from a Ukrainian deli. I think it's like in the beginning, some pastries and salads, something like that from a great Ukrainian deli in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait a second. I'm getting a message here from somebody having trouble signing in. Oh, Ray says the link is missing from the temple homepage. What is the Zoom password? Hannah, can you help?
There is no password. What do you know? What's his last name? What's his email? Do you know?
Okay, his last name is Arouesty. And yeah, I know his email. Give me 1 second. 1 second. 1 second if I know what the heck I'm doing. 2 seconds if I don't.
It'll take you 5 then.
Okay.
Who said that?
Is it rcosserin@gmail.com? Something like that.
Wait 1 sec.
I'll do it.
I'm getting close. I am getting close.
That's the other Ray.
Yeah, this is R-A-Y. Yeah, it's avocado, AVOCADO runner, one word, avocado runner @gmail.com. I actually know why that's the case. AVOCADOR UNNER. So there's only one, right? There's avocado runner, one word, gmail.com.
Okay,
Anna?
got it.
Super. Thank you.
Avocado runner. Now that's
Okay. The concert's going to be fabulous. We should be there. I'm going to be there. Reese's going to be there. And we're there for the cause, Ukraine. But I'll have to tell you, I'm going to be there for the music as well. The music will be fantastic.
fabulous, yeah.
Okay. So
It's a concert on Zoom. It's a concert on Zoom. I'm in Florida.
yeah,
I saw that it was going to be online. I looked at it
I
this
think
morning.
it's going to be, but you're going to have to check into the Wilshire Boulevard website, and I think you'll be able to pick it up through that.
So I'll have to stay up a little late. It's at 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock our time.
That's correct.
I don't get too sleepy.
It'll be worth it.
So
I don't know how to fix that problem. Okay.
So my DVR for my news programs, and I'm going to watch the thing live.
Yeah. It's going to be a magnificent concert. Jim Ruxin, do you have anything coming up?
Nothing to announce for tonight. Next week is a discussion of a film to be announced probably Monday or Tuesday.
Okay, good. Cindy, anything coming up?
We have a tour of the Glazer campus for Sisterhood on Monday, and we're joining with the WOW group for their, well, it's a Passover Seder, but they do it before Passover. It'll be April 11th, and it'll be really our first chance for the university women to really meet the WOW women and get to know them and see their Seder. That's April 11th. And we have a high tea coming up and a Mahjong tournament, but they're not for a while.
Okay, super. And I have to tell you that Lynn Wortham and I met last night, and I almost didn't recognize her because she didn't have the backdrop from Hawaii. And it was kind of like stunning to see that change, but it was really great. It was wonderful. And the music last night, I don't know if you're aware of the fact that after services ended, I was walking out hoping to get some really good Cuban food, which was available. And I looked around, Risa's not there. She's on the bima talking to the drum players. And within 3 minutes, my wife is banging a drum and smiling like, oh my God. So it was altogether a beautiful evening.
What was the purpose of the Cuban thing? I may have missed that. I came in a few minutes late.
I don't know if there was a purpose other than we're going to be doing music and Jewish music and Cuban, whatever, from various places. And it just happened. I don't know if there's anything more than that. In next month, the same type of service is going to be focused on Persian music, yes, with a Persian dinner to follow, a paid dinner. So you have to make reservations and all that, but I'm already in line. So
Do you have a date?
I'm sorry, they just said next month so watch for it. It'll be coming up. Checking in. Okay. How is everybody? Anybody, anything new happening in the world? Jeff, how's the electoral campaign coming?
So far, so good. I think Nick has two opponents. They are both anti-vaxxers. They're both, so I'm not sure how serious a threat they pose, but you know, he's charging full speed ahead. He was on the Fox News last night talking about the lifting of the mask mandate within the schools. So he's doing fine.
Yeah, we have, I mean, that's great, and wish him well from all of us. And by the way, you know, my memory, Jeff, is really at this point, you know, headed into the toilet. But I do remember the time when he took off from Chevra Torah and said, just give me a couple of months, I'll get myself balanced and I'll be back. So that's it. I mean,
well, just his month is in the same sense, the biblical sense. How long was the first day?
Okay, got it. Thank you very much, and we move on.
But speaking of that, I have to leave early today because I was on the board at Curtis School for 10 years and haven't been back in many years, and they're having a brunch to honor past trustees. So I figured that was something to get to. So I have to be on the Curtis campus at 10. But as I said in my little tweet, my little message, I couldn't start the week without getting in a few digs at the rabbi. So I'm here to do what I can, you know.
Yes, and I have body armor on, so I'm good. I knew you were going to be here.
Okay.
Terrific, and it's a joy. And no other checking in. If not, we're going to get right to work. I have, let's see, what should I begin with? How about really bad news? Okay. I'm going to begin with bad news. There is a city in Ukraine known as Dnipro, D-N-I-P-R-O, and it's located on the Dnieper River. I thought you'd want to know that. In the meanwhile, Dnipro today is a Jewish community. It has a large Jewish community, and there is in Dnipro a building called the Menorah Center, an enormous building in 7 towers like a menorah, okay? The Menorah Center. It's the largest Chabad center in the world and houses the largest Holocaust museum in the former Soviet states. And it also has a mikveh, kosher restaurants, wedding halls. But the city of Dnipro produces nearly all of the shmura matzah for the former Soviet world and exports it to the Western world and to the United States. However, Dnipro is being hit by Russian missiles, and the Jews are fleeing, and it may not be possible for matzah production to ramp up in Dnipro. So it has been a subject of a lot of conflict. Then I found this in the article. Dnipro's Jewish population has had a conflict with Russia over matzah specifically. The Lubavitcher Rebbe's father, Rabbi Levi Yitzhak Schneerson, wanted to have his own supervision of the matzah factory. The Russians didn't let him. The Lubavitcher have their highest standards eventually, and that's why the Lubavitcher Rebbe was kicked out of Russia over issues of matzah supervision in Dnipro. I just thought, here it is. The Ukrainian bakery exports 70-ton handmade matzah every year. I don't know what to do with that information. I just thought it would be sufficiently depressing to allow us to begin our Shabbos today.
What name
Actually,
does it come under? What name is the matzah?
I have no idea. Thank you for asking, and I'm pleased to say I don't know. You know how it is sometimes. You go to the store, you reach up to a shelf, you pull down a box of shmura matzah, and you don't, who's going to think, where did it come from? Right? And much of it comes from the Ukraine, and much of it comes from the town of Dnipro. And while everything else in the world is struggling, and I'm sure that this is going to be, the prices of shmura matzah, which are always very high. Oh, Ray, you got in. Great, great. The price of shmura matzah undoubtedly will begin. We are going, because even though I didn't receive a serious personal attack from Effie, we're going to begin by getting right into the text, because that is a demand. We're in Leviticus chapter 8, verse 1, in the New Plout, 694, in the Women of Reformed Judaism text, 603. It's all about, this week is all about sacrifices. Last week was all about sacrifices. Last week's Sedra Vayikra, this week's Sedra Tzav are intensely oriented toward how to do the right sacrifices. I heard Susan Nanis yesterday, Friday, the noon, she did the teaching, the Torah teaching. Trying to draw a comparison between how people sought to connect with God 2,500 years ago with ritual sacrifice and how people try to connect today. I had some disagreements. but I guess that's okay. Rabbi Dr. Larry Hoffman, who is one of the great liturgists of 20th, early 21st century, taught that ritual is performative. It's theater, performative. What we do in our worship pattern, no matter who we are, no matter what community, is performance. What makes a performance today, 2022, what makes a performance successful? Open to the crowd. What makes a performance successful? Been to the symphony. Dudamel has become world famous at this point. Okay, Cindy.
That the audience enjoys whatever the performance is.
Super. Okay, that's one piece. There's much, but that's there. A performance is successful when people enjoy it. Okay, Jim.
Sorry, let me get myself on board. Oh, okay. I think a successful performance is one that engages the audience and moves them to places where they may not have anticipated going on their own.
That's good. I mean, we're doing, this is Los Angeles. Of course, your people would understand this, but yes, Ray.
Great content.
Two Rays have their hands up. Okay.
There's a Roy.
Ray, please.
Okay,
Great.
Ray, who's next to Carrie?
Great content and effective delivery.
Content.
And good delivery.
And good delivery. Ray Kosara.
Jim said substantially what was on my mind, but I will further qualify it that the intention of what kind of transformation happen in the audience is essential. And so it may often be a situation where a audience member is transformed to consider something new or consider something in a new, expanded, challenged way. That is certainly one important successful kind of a consequence of a successful performance. But intention is everything. And I would say the opposite of that is when the PBS channel puts on a musical performance by a band that was important about 40 years ago. And the importance of that is to comfort a generation of listeners that the cultural landscape of their life may still speak to them in a familiar way. And there's no transformation going on when we see a 40-year-old band on PBS. But for that, I would say a successful performance is one that does not challenge and then makes comfort. So intention, I think, is everything, shapes everything, and defines everything about the effectiveness of a performance.
Did all of you hear Ray kick me under a bus? I shouldn't take it personally. So bands from 40 years ago have a purpose in keeping old people comfortable. Is that a good summary?
Yep.
Okay.
I didn't name names, but I'm sure that's a good summary. And, you have a few years on me, but I'm old and lazy enough myself to take pleasure in nostalgia and seek it out. So then I will say I've kicked us together under the same bus.
Okay. So, but what Rick Asaran is saying specifically, what's the intention of the performance and does the performance transform? Okay. And that's good. Susie and then Fern.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I think it's critical for the performer to have a total knowledge of the audience, to take a little bit of time, not only to be prepared with their delivery, but to recognize who their audience is going to be ahead of time.
A performance is effective when it's carried out with awareness of its intended audience.
And related to that, you are not kicked out of the bus, onto the bus, because you are aware of all of us, all of us. If we were all rabbis, you might do your performance a bit differently, but you recognize who we all are and you hear what you're going to say to us. That's not an easy thing to do. You do it beautifully.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that again? No, okay.
No, everybody-
Okay, okay, Fern.
I think that success has to be defined. It depends who's successful for whom. What the director or the actors intend to achieve, that would make success, or what the audience is going to receive. It may be entirely different, and I think it's defined differently.
Super. I mean, really, just think about all that's happened. Now, take every good thing that was said and apply it to walking into a synagogue today. Everything that you said, all those pieces. I'm not going to, go back. You got the point. And it is what Larry Hoffman was saying is that all worship is performative, and what you lined up are all the factors that would make for a successful performance, and then you use that to evaluate what's going on in the synagogue today. Did that make sense? In other words, is this what we call Erev Shabbat Friday evening services? Is that performance doing all those things? That's a great question. And I'm not going to dream of offering an answer, but it has all those pieces. Now, I want to go. Oh, Fern, we're stopping here.
Is it reasonable to ask if one's expectations of the performance are reasonable? In other words, I think, when I used to think a lot about what people wanted from services. And I think very often people wanted to come and be transported. They wanted to feel elevated, magic, whatever that word was. But it was not always reasonable.
What happened? Wait, Fern, hold it. You got muted. I'm not sure what happened.
I think it's Jeff's.
The host muted me, but I don't think it came from mine.
Okay, so you're talking about the audience.
I said that I don't know that the audience's expectations are necessarily reasonable. And I wonder if that isn't something we should be asking. So when people go to services and what they want is to be transported, to feel magic, etc., without having knowledge or without having, are they expecting something that's unreasonable to expect from the performance, from the ritual?
God, could we have a weekend on that question? Okay, Fern, I'm not going to attempt, that's a great thing to put on the table. Is it reasonable? And on the other hand, no one asks a potential buyer of a car, are your expectations reasonable? The consumer has expectations. The worship attender has expectations. I want to flip back, but I have Ray Kasaran, a hand up. Yes, Ray.
Thank you, Rabbi, and thank you, Fern, for speaking to something that I feel consciously really most of the time as well. And this is an overlapping but particular side issue, I think, of Stan's question about the expectations of the people coming in, and are the expectations reasonable? And I will say that I do have my own agenda of what I think is appropriate to look for in entering a space of Jewish worship, and a frustration that I have. I'll put it on the table. It's not the central question, but it's part of what the landscape is, I think, that we're looking at. As somebody myself with a virtually no Jewish education, who came to engage with my Judaism through some very spotty and chaotic and woefully incomplete self-learning as an adult, I came into Judaism because it at some point became relevant and meaningful and important to me, and did some of that work, not nearly enough, but a little of it. But a very important part of my experience, and I think the experience of fellow congregants that I would wish to be engaged also, is a decision to say, I need to put some effort into learning some of this stuff here. And what frustrates me, and I think frustrates the institutions of especially liberal Judaism, though there is no other Judaism for me, is I will say lazy, that's my word, or self-absorbed expectation on the part of would-be participants who come seldom, don't put in a lot of effort, that whenever they choose to wander into a sanctuary, that their level of constant non-engagement is going to be accommodated on their schedule, and that the clergy and performers, since we use the word, but I don't like it, will accommodate to their having almost no recognition of Jewish Jewish canon and Jewish practice and Jewish context, and will spoon feed them at a level of somebody who does not know any of the stuff, and that this experience will always be ready and waiting for them, no matter when they choose to stumble into a sanctuary. And that defeats an environment that continues to engage the people who have been in a sustained way invested in the continuance of their engagement with Judaism and the development of their knowledge. And if you spoon feed the people who expect to be met at a place of doing close to nothing every single hour the sanctuary is open, then you will send all of the other people out the back door and you will fail. I also recognize that somehow there is a cultural tolerance of the consumer, to use another of Stanley's words that I don't care for, in the sense of accommodating the people who expect to be spoon-fed from a place of nothing when it's a shul that they walk into, but people who are engaged with another discipline, and what I'm thinking of right now is yoga, they have no expectation of walking into a yoga class having never been there before, and the class having to stoop to their level. People who practice yoga appreciate that this is something that you develop as a discipline through time, and whatever level you're at, you go to a next level through practice. But they do not make the same demands, implicit or explicit, that a yoga class will transform itself into the most accessible, lowest stepping stone for them to engage with it. So okay. I respect these. I'm sorry, I was getting to my last sentence, but I have said my piece, so I will be quiet, and thank you for your patience. That was long.
No. And as I call on Brad, I'm going to just add, no one puts those requirements on people attending theater. They walk in and either the performance embraces them or it doesn't. And blame isn't, but this, Fern, go talk to the board. This is a weekend study thing that is really, really interesting. Brad.
Well, I'm kind of offended at the whole idea of thinking of myself as the audience when I go to synagogue. I'm not the audience. I'm a participant. I'm an actor, just the way the clergy is. And I think to turn a religious service into a spectacle is a mistake. I mean, my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, they belong to a synagogue in the valley where the rabbi and the cantors are all opera singers. And when we go, we're always, we feel out of place. We feel like we haven't gone to shul. We've gone to a musical event. And so, you know, to think of, again, I come back to it, to think of us coming to shul as the audience, I think is a horrible mischaracterization of what happens when we come to synagogue.
Super, thank you. Either Mara or Harv, I'm not sure who.
First of all, I absolutely agree with Brad. And secondly, are we going to do text study today?
Yes. Yes, I've been trying to get back to it for quite a while, and I accept that. Okay, Eric?
Oh, wait a minute. I got to unmute just to, shit. I'm sorry.
You have.
Okay, I got to unmute. Okay, thank you. I went to a lecture by Jacobs a couple of years ago about synagogue architecture, and I see that what the Matzovu is trying to be outside, welcoming us in with beautiful things. And also when you go in the synagogue, I get beautiful things out of it, like the learning and everything like that. And I love the Mishkan service from Central Synagogue and the Torah study because I get things out of it and I get insight into life by going to the temple.
Thank you. Effie?
Yes. It's going back to some of the things Fern said about the service. Different people in the service have different expectations. I like the service to be like it was 30 years ago or 40 years ago or when I was a kid. I like the repetition of hearing the same things sung like I heard when I was younger. And yet some people like to have new tunes constantly. So that's a very difficult thing for the cantor and the rabbi to solve the needs of different people.
Super. Now I'm going to go back to Leviticus chapter 8, verse 1. The Eternal One spoke to Moses, saying, take Aaron and his sons' vestments, anointing oil, the bowl of purgation, rams, basket of assemble the community leadership. And this is what they do. In other words, at this point in our Sedra, we are having the ritual of getting the Mishkan, the tabernacle, to function and getting the priesthood to function. In the interim, Moses is the, what's it called, Fern? The rabbi who comes in for a year, I guess interim, comes in for a year, right? An interim. So Moses is the interim until Aaron and his sons are ordained. So Moses is functioning as high priest until the whole ship is sailing. Now, the comment that I wanted to connect, with what we said about performative theater in ritual, that theater is performative, was my feeling that the people who came and watched all these rituals of burning animals and burning incense and offering meal offerings and all that stuff were receiving the kind of, here, I don't throw things at me, the kind of performance that they were expecting, and they loved it. It was good. It worked for them. To say that we have superior is a kind of judgment that's almost inappropriate. The people came to the temple and watched animals get burned and fires and smoke and incense and all that stuff. They didn't think that they were seeing inferior ritual. They probably thought they were getting the best of the best, and it worked for them until it stopped working for them. And I don't just mean when the temple was destroyed. One of the biggest problems in building the third temple is that when you push people enough, they don't want it. I don't want it. I do not want the temple rebuilt. I don't want to burn cows as my way of approaching the divine. And one of the things that we have to look at, not everything the way that we used to do it will still speak to people hundreds of years afterwards. People's expectations change. And what Hoffman was saying is that those who offer worship have to be aware that tastes and preferences change. And if worship doesn't adapt, that's a failure. And it's not a criticism of the audience. That's a failure. And I would love to go on with this. I'm not going to do that. We're going to go forward. But what we believe has to be firmly attached to the ritual into which we are being invited. I don't know if that makes sense. What we believe, what we need, has to be related to the environment, the music, the words, the ritual into which we are being welcomed. And the story of humankind is that, hi Penina, that those things change. When you get to be of my age, a little bit less change is really nice, because I love going to services and I love what we have. But the reality, numerically, percentage-wise, the ritual theater is drawing reduced numbers. And we have to be aware of that. Okay, Fern, and then I'm going to really jump into the text. I really am.
Isn't that precisely what Mara and Brad were saying, that if our services are not participatory, then we are ignoring our beliefs, which are that we are partners with God. We don't just watch and say, God, you do for us. We're expected to be partners in the repair of the world. And a liturgy, a service which is performative rather than participatory, ignores our philosophy, if you will.
Okay, I only say that performance does not exclude participation. Performance doesn't necessarily mean full frontal, you sit there, I do. A good performance, you've been in theater in the round, a full performance could very much be a performance that involves everybody. And you're right, of course. Erica, quick, and then let me run.
Okay, I saw the Purim show from Central Synagogue a couple of days ago, and it was based on The Greatest Showman. So it was, I think I get the feeling that we have to have engaging music, engaging everything to so that people are willing to participate and to learn.
And I would say that a couple of you expressed empathy for the poor rabbis and cantors, and I accept that. We need that, because how the heck do you keep faith with tradition and keep up with evolving changes in taste? And how do you lead without abandoning the core? And how do you preserve the core without neglecting the world that we're in? And that's why rabbis are well served who have ritual committees, and that it's not only the rabbi and the cantor doing this work, but that's a separate political question. Okay, look what's going to happen when verse 4, Moses did as the Eternal commanded him. And when the leadership was assembled, Moses said to the leadership, "This is what God wants done." This is not an incidental comment. Ray, yes, but I don't want to get involved in politics, so I'm not going to answer you. Ray Kusarin, I read what you wrote. I agree, but I'm not answering. Okay. I'm politically very adept. Moses wants to show the world, his world, the Jewish world, that what he's doing is not an act of nepotism. This is how the medieval rabbis looked at this. It starts off by saying, God spoke to Moses saying, take Aaron. It's not because it's Moses's brother and he's giving him a key job. And it's kind of fun that the rabbis in the Middle Ages already were fully aware that nepotism is a real thing, and that sometimes in the real world, people get jobs because they're well related to somebody. I've heard that's possible. I mean, I've heard. So Moses is saying to the people, folks, what I'm about to do, this is what God wants, not what I am necessarily interested in. And now we've, for 2 Sedras, watched Moses lay out all the rituals for sacrifice and all the things that the priests have to do to be ready, the garments and so on. What comes first? The sanctification of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, or the sanctification of the priests? What comes first? Look at your text. Look at your text. Verse 6 and following. First up is going to be the priests. When all is said and done, the text wants us to say, okay, we sanctify the priests so that when we sanctify the tabernacle, we have the priests ready to go in and start operating immediately. This is how Rashi, others understand what's going on here. Okay, so what happened to all of the requirements that we're reading here once the temple was destroyed? Can we have a couple of short answers?
Out the window.
What happened to all the ritual? Harv?
Goes away, stops.
That's an answer. Other answers? Other answers. What happens to, you're looking at a huge hunk of the Book of Leviticus, which is a huge hunk of the Torah. Fern.
And some people transformed them. They said, we will do this ritual a different way. We'll use it as metaphor, or we'll do it differently.
There's that word transformation again, and thank you. There's that word transformation again. The people transform things. I read something in the Women's Torah commentary, which I found very fascinating. First of all the sacrificial stuff, all that we have, the rabbis declared we now pray instead of sacrifice, or we study instead of sacrifice. So they view prayer as an effective replacement for sacrifice. That's old stuff. We know it. It sounds good. But in the Women's Torah commentary, look at the role of women throughout Jewish history and see if by implication we haven't created another group of priests, namely the women. I want to go slowly on this. The Talmud says that in the best of Jewish homes, the Shabbat table replaces the Mishkan, the tabernacle, and the altar. The Shabbos table is meant to be an altar. Let me just go forward with this. What's being offered on the altar at a Shabbos table? What's being offered?
Food.
Well, let's be more narrowly specific. Challah. Okay? Challah, a bread offering. You all know, I know, what the word challah originally meant. But let me just repeat it because I like to hear myself talk. When challah bread was being baked, it was required to tear a piece of the end of the dough off and throw it into the baking oven to be burned totally. That torn dough is what originally was called challah. The original challah was the piece of dough thrown in the oven and burned as a replacement for the sacrificial grain offerings. Do you hear what's being said? Who does this?
Mrs.
The woman.
The women. Well, you know, in those days, the women, they did that. They did that. The priests set up the altar. The priests monitor the eternal light. The priests put out the things that are required to be made. You know that some of the sacrifices involved eating. Some of the, like the shlamim sacrifice, the whole, W-H-O-L-E, whole sacrifice involves burning a small piece of it and then giving parts to the priests to eat, giving the people the rest to have a sacred picnic, eating the sacrifice. What is going on when Shabbos is working in a home? And it was a fascinating insight to me. Who monitors what is permitted and not permitted on a Shabbos table? Call it kosher and treif, call it anything you want. Who monitors that?
The woman.
Well, in those days, the women who did the cooking. I am fully up to the fact that many men today do this, but in this role, we actually have a new class of priests. Isn't that a fascinating way to look at Shabbos dinner together? Fern.
I mean, I know that elevating these things to have huge meaning is what the Orthodox do, to say that women have an elevated place because they get to do all these homey stuff, but it doesn't work for me. It's a false elevation. It's patronizing, frankly.
Okay, I did say that today, whoever prepares the meal is doing that. And I believe that. But any other comment? Any other comment? In Jewish life, what we eat is part of self-identification as members of the Jewish community. It just is. Whether we observe kashrut in full, in part, or not at all. I can just talk about Stanley. I am not a kosher person. Our house here does not separate milk and meat. Our home in Israel for 12 years did. We had a strictly kosher home because in Israel, literally, it is assumed that when you walk into somebody's home, you are going to be able to eat a meal that is kosher. That is the assumption in an Israeli home. It's not always true, but it is the assumption. So we had a kosher home. But we have our Jewish elements. You won't find pork products or shellfish in our home. That's our minimal choice to hold on to something which is sacred to the Jewish people. We use food as one of the ways to create a Jewish community. Ray. Avocado. Ray, avocado.
Are you saying that the destruction of the first temple transformed the Jewish home, that it made the celebration of Shabbat more meaningful in the home rather than the Mishkan?
You ask good questions, and I would say if we move forward to post the first temple, but really into the second temple and second temple period, that is precisely what occurred. And that was one of the disruptive, transformative moments in all of Jewish existence. You realize, Ray, that when the second temple was in existence, millions of Jews lived outside of Palestine. They never could get to the temple to do the ritual or to offer the ritual. Already, Jews were taking the ritual from the temple and transposing it into the home. And it was a successful way. And Fern, that's why I understand your severe criticism, because there is an aspect in which we're trying to fake honoring women by transforming this. I get it. But I also will say that the goal of having the house be what the Talmud calls mikdash ma'at, a little sanctuary, was actually extraordinarily important for Jewish survival.
Wow.
Probably should have said that that assigning the importance to this role is less problematic than the fact that it's intended to be assuaging for not getting to have a larger role in the larger world. It's not that the role within the home isn't significant. It's the exclusion from the rest of the world because we have this prize of being in charge of the home.
I'm totally with you. Totally with you. And what is rich about today is we have women rabbis and women, Talmudic scholars and all that, and men who are taking responsibility for the home and all that. The issue isn't who does it. The issue is how do we relate to what's going on? And for me, oh my God, if we can't have the home as a major place for strengthening Jewish identity, it's going to be impossible for Jews to survive. And I really, really, really believe that. Whoever is doing it. Okay, Brad?
Well, this is on a different tangent, but it seems to me that the idea of eating the sacrifice, whereas that's no longer a Jewish thing, that's become a Catholic thing in the sense that that's what communion is. Taking the wafer and the wine, consuming the body and the blood of Christ through the communion wafer and wine is a way of consuming the sacrifice. So they are continuing a tradition that we have left behind.
Yes. Yes. You look at the priests, the bishops, the cardinals, the pope, you look at them, they are full-scale successors to Aaron and the priests, the Levites, the Kohanim, and so forth. Yes. And what do they call the table on which the host is found? It is an altar. Okay. And who originally was the only one capable of touching, drinking, eating the whole business, or in sharing the sacrifice? The priests, the bishops, those people. And in Judaism, we moved to a different type of I'm not going to say religious performance, I'm going to get yelled at, of religious ritual behavior. And what goes on in a Catholic church today is a contemporary reenactment of what we're reading right here. Mm-hmm. Totally correct. And the interesting thing is that didn't happen in Judaism. Now we can talk about why, but you're totally correct, Brad. It happened in Judaism. We stopped that. And one of the things that I find least enjoyable in a traditional Orthodox service, and sometimes I really enjoy an Orthodox service, is the Musaf service on Saturday morning or a festival, the additional service. Because there are Musaf offerings, Shabbos in the Torah about sacrifices, and so they ended up with doing more praying. I don't actually need that. But everything about the sacrificial worship that we're reading here is set aside and replaced by study, prayer, and I will insist, home ritual. Home ritual. What do we need the synagogue for on Pesach? I don't want to say nothing, but the fact of the matter is the Seder is a home thing. It's great to have public Sedarim for those who can't have or do whatever, fine. Much of the richness of Jewish life is in the home. Different genders study and pray and monitor the home. I don't care which gender is involved. I care that those three things happen: prayer, study, home. And that's what we have done to move past the sacrificial worship. Ray, this is way too interesting and we're running out of time. Ray.
Okay, it was a
Despite-
photograph, it was a photograph and a painting of like an elderly man having passed, Sabbath meal at home, and it had a candle and a carafe of wine on it and some bread. So he was replicating the temple in Jerusalem on that little painting, the sketch. There was a painting.
Yes. Okay, Ray.
Photograph.
Rabbi,
I don't remember.
Despite what you say about the importance of the Jewish home, despite what you're saying about the importance of the Jewish home, there's a move in some Reform shuls to sanctify interfaith marriage.
To sanctify?
Interfaith marriage.
Fern, I don't know where Fern is. Okay, we have another huge topic, not going to go there, but of course that's a challenge. Of course that's a challenge. Ray, you're aware of the fact that 60% of the marriages now involving one Jew, at least, 60% of Jewish are interfaith marriages today. 60%. And you're posing a problem that is real. How do you have a Shabbos table if the participants aren't fully aware? And you know whose responsibility it is to make that work? The rabbis, the cantors, the temples. They've got to find a way, we've got to find a way to make the Jewish home what it is meant to be: prayer, study, home. And I can't imagine Jewish survival without that. And if we can't do it with 60% of our marriages, we are in, as the kids would say, deep doo-doo. Serious problem. Thank you for raising it. Yes, Yes, we have to stop. I don't want to stop. Mara, we have to stop. And quick comment.
He just called him.
I was just going to say that it's only right that the sanctification be brought into the home, and that the next step is to recognize that we're asked to be, each of us to be a sanctuary, and which makes each of us a priest in our own sanctuary. And that in order to be able to do that, the synagogue needs to do a better job of educating every Jew so that there's a recognition of that need.
You have now changed my formal pattern in which I had the home and the people presiding at the home replacing the priest. And I totally love what you said about there's also the need to be in control, to be a priest, if you will, of your own soul. Yes. And I'll remember that, and maybe I'll give you credit, maybe not. I'm not sure. But I love that. Yes. We're going to shift with love, everybody. We're going to shift to Kaddish now. Thank you for today. Wow. And do we have something that we would love to see actually happen in the world? Oh, yeah, we could do that. Kaddish list. Those who passed away during the past month: Sally Berman, Ted Bird, Yuet Shun Ho-Chan, Hillary Turtletop Costin, Mike Culver, Alan Elliott Firestein, Stanley Goldklang, Linda Hockman, Coco Konar, Mehdi Persalami, Gideon Rossner, Marcel Reisenberg, Jane Scheiber, Teresa Shapiro, Donald Van, Pearl Yeager, Nancy Zeman. and those the anniversaries of whose deaths have occurred during the past week: Ruth Anion, Robert Bober, Vernon Lee Bell, Ellis Berkowitz, Vera Barron, Harold Bernkrant, Sam Bluestone, Julius Steve Brody, Harold Chessel, Paul Scott Cohn, Helen Waxler Coleman, Joel Davidson, Mitchell James Dresser, Harriet Ellis, Bess Epstein, Morris Feinberg, Marty Feldman, Ray Fenton, Evelyn Fox, Ann Friedman, Doug Gerson, Philip Ginsberg, Aaron Glickman, Harold Globe, Helen Goldfeeder, David Goodman, Warren Goodman, Stephen Grad, Anna Greenberg, Ruth Grosser, Henri Harar, Jack Harris, Richard Horowitz, Rose Jaffe, Ralph Kalish, Maureen Kaplan, Ann Kaplan, Lee Kimak, Carl Klein, Anna Klein, Selma Konitz, Gary Kress, Ed Landa, Monty Albert Lauder, Richard Carl Levy, Faye Levitt, Larry Lindeman, Ann Liddy, Samuel Luderman, Russell Lomask, Joseph Mahbub Blanfard, Yigal Makeover, Gail Meyerson, Al Michaels, Samuel Michaels, Moshe Namvar, Carol Nyman, Mort Newman, Saul Newman, Leonard Perlman, Raymond Perlov, Merle Lorch, Failzer, Paul Garfield Phelps, Simon Plattis, William Polip, Michael Portis, Dennis Price, William Pryor, Ann Robinson, Pauline Rose, Florence Rose, Helen Rawson, Irv Rubenstein, Fanny Rubenstein, Vera Solomons, Arlene Schwab, Nina Schwartz, Ruth Schwartz, Larry Schwimmer, Betty Schanbraum, Joel Schanbraum, Harry Shane, Susan Shaw, Buddy Schreier, Dr. Joel Smasson, Marion Smoke, Avril Soller, Susan Schreer, Randy Stein, Natalie Stein, Betty Strawgate, Saeed Tabibi, Robert Tushin, Arthur Tucker, Norman Turtle, Roland Wallen, Libby Wolf, Margalit Zadok. Okay, and do we have any other names to be mentioned at this time? And I do apologize for failed pronunciation. Do we have any other names? Please feel free to speak them aloud at this moment. We bear in mind the names, the people we mentioned. We bear in mind the names of all those who died in defense of the United States and in defense of the state of Israel. We mention those slaughtered in unjust and cruel wars. We mention the names of all of those who died through incidents of violence and hatred. We bear in mind all of those who have no one to say Kaddish for them. And while we're doing this, we pray for peace, meaningful, just peace. Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah v'almad divra chilutei v'amlich malchutei v'chaye chon of yomechon v'chaye dechol beit Israel v'agala v'zman karev v'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabba Mavarach Le'olam le'omei Omaya Yitbarach v'yitztabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei d'kudishah brichu le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechama da'amiran b'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom v'imru mav hu ya'aseh shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Amen.
The God who makes peace in the high places, make peace in our hearts, make peace in our homes, Make peace in the household of Israel. Make peace among all the families and nations of earth, and let us say, Amen. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. Don't forget the concert. Have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful week. This was great. And we continue. Study, prayer, and home. Oh, he summarized. Okay. Very, very good. Bye-bye, everyone. Lots of love.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
See you tonight.